So, well, I'll ask one to Dr. Ferrari. So where do you think organelle targeting is going? You mentioned mitochondria as one. Are there other organelles that are on the radar screen?
Yes, well, certainly targeting the nucleus is very important for gene therapy. As we all know, gene therapy, the big problems of gene therapy has been delivery. The same is said of RNA interference therapeutics, delivery. I think we have been able, it has been simpler, if you will, for us to be able to target the cytoplasm. It seems obvious, but it isn't, because these particles, of course, are internalized by the cell in endosomes and then progress to the endosomal, lysosomal cascade of events, and having your drug, especially your biological payload, encapsulated within the lysosome, of course, doesn't do you any good. So the whole notion of being able to be picked up by the cell, but also escape the lysosome so they can release your payload in a way that can lead to RNA interference type of therapeutics is a very complex process. So that type of a targeting strategy we have been able, I think, to address, and I've shown some of the examples of efficacy on that. Getting into the nucleus, it is through a process of translocation is, I think, is fairly well established from some of the results that we have, even though we do not have a substantial therapeutic efficacy validation yet. But, you know, the mitochondria and the plasmic reticulum, there is, I think, the sky is the limit, and I think we are just scratching the surface on opportunities.
And related to that, when siRNAs first came out, there was extraordinary enthusiasm about them having therapeutic potential, and there's been challenges with in vivo delivery because of liver localization. Is nanoparticles a way to get around some of those challenges?
Yes, yes. Maybe I can tell a little bit of a story here that I think has got a bit of a moral to the story. As you probably know, after the awarding of the Nobel Prize for, of course, for siRNA, many pharmaceutical companies rushed to develop therapeutic libraries based on those. And there are companies such as Merck that invested $2 billion, published data, Roche, $800 million, without a single drug ever making it to the market because of problems of delivery. Then there is the story of the David and Goliath, a little company that was able to actually put together the first clinical study, the first phase 1 study, first in human, first in cancer, delivering against solid tumors siRNA therapeutic agent, was able to go to a great giant, Roche, and essentially, based on the position of strength that came from the fact of having the therapeutic delivery vehicles developed, able to essentially go to Roche and acquire the entirety of its portfolio on siRNA therapeutics, $800 million worth, essentially the David eating up Goliath, if you will. I think that is an important notion to consider. I am a director of that company, so I have a vested personal interest that I need to disclose. It's called Arrowhead. But I think that the ability to see this, to have a ringside seat, I think has been wonderful because it shows that if you sit on the critical path with some innovative, perhaps orthogonal, unorthodox the piece of strategic development of science or technology, sometimes you can really reverse the roles and create partnerships that are very advantageous. Now I'm hoping that that will mean a lot for the state of Texas in the next embodiment of the company. Thanks for asking.
2 questions here.
In the case of the nuclear interaction of the thyroid hormone, if you feed a thyroidectomy patient pure synthetic thyroxine, does it adequately reverse the phenomenon, or do you have to feed all of the strange other things that are produced by the thyroid gland?
Yeah, it's a great question. More or less, most of what thyroid hormone does can be, or the absence of thyroid hormone is reversed by giving thyroxine. It's a bit of a complicated question because the actual active hormone is actually a product of thyroxine called triiodothyronine, where one iodine molecule has been removed, and it's actually the form that interacts with the receptor. So there is some controversy about whether for certain tissues you need to give a combination of T4, which is thyroxine, or with this thing called T3, or whether T4 and its conversion to T3 in the body is sufficient. But having said that, the other things that the thyroid gland has in it molecules like thyroglobulin and others that people in the audience may have heard of. Those are not necessary to restore the health in terms of energy and lipid metabolism and so on that you can get just from taking thyroxine and maybe a little triiodothyronine or T3. Synthroid is thyroxine, T4.
Hi, yes. So my question is perhaps mostly directed to Mauro. Hi, Mauro. Although all of the talks were wonderful. When you mention nanotechnology and innovations, inevitably you begin to think about FDA approval. So what I'm curious to hear your 2012 opinion of where nanotechnology, nanomedicine is and where the FDA is, and are they shaking hands yet?
I guess drugs are all on the nanoscale, so in that sense, we're there by Mauro's picture, but in terms of new deliveries.
No, I agree. I think essentially there has been a bit of a process, of course, as it rightfully has to be, for the FDA to come to terms with the fact that there's pretty much any molecule you put in is a nanoparticle of sorts. And how it is synthesized may be different. And of course, there was a lot of initial resistance to this very notion. And we've gone back and forth. We've actually partnered with the FDA in the studies. The Alliance for Nanohealth has received grants from the FDA to help them address this set of problems. At the end of the day, there is no specific guidance for nanoparticles. Nanoparticles are nanodrugs, are drugs just like any other drugs and go through all of the, of course, the protocols and procedures just the very same way as any other drug. And the request is made, of course, in the clarification of FDA's position for what pertains to nanomedicines. They also make the additional declaration at the end where they say, do the normal test like everybody else does, but if we want to ask you any additional question, we will, which is the position that they have exactly with every possible thing that you can bring to them. So even though there is a little bit of a notion of resistance to nano being a bit foreign and coming from the outer reaches of the galaxy, reality is that it is becoming more and more ingrained and recognized as being whole citizen of, if you will, of the great country of new drugs like everything else. So I'm less concerned than I was 10 years ago, for sure.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention, and thank you to the speakers.
Thank you.